law enforcement knocked on the door. And I was like, oh, shoot, what just happened? What did I just do? Like, what just happened? Wait a minute, I'm in college. I have class tomorrow. How do you do this jail thing? I can't go to jail. I'm a college student.
And the severity of that is something you would think that somebody say, hey, just don't do that. You weren't taking the money, Kaysia. You were discounting. It wasn't like you were getting hundreds of thousands or thousands of dollars into your pocket.
And at that very moment is when I basically transformed into a college student, into my own advocate.
Mm-hmm. Our record never goes away. Being a felon, ex-felon, we live with it all the way through our lives. It's how we handle it. All right. Welcome back, Nightmare Success In and Out listeners. This is where you come for what happens when your worst fear becomes your reality. How do you adapt, survive, overcome, set yourself free? Well, I have really been looking forward to this interview with my guest because she's got one of those true nightmare success stories. I mean, checks all the boxes. So if you tuned in for this and you want to be inspired and you want to think, how can I get back up after I've been knocked down? Kaysia Earley is your listen. You're at the right place. Hey, don't forget to follow, subscribe, share, comment, all those good things. It helps the show. So let me tell you a little bit about Kaysia Earley. She literally went from solitary confinement to a powerhouse attorney. She's lived on both sides of the justice system. She's an award-winning trial litigator. She's the founding attorney of Earley Law Firm. She's tried over 100 trials to verdict and secured hundreds of dismissals in less than 10 years. However, 20 years ago, she was a criminal defendant. Her senior year in college, she was arrested and charged with felony embezzlement for discounting shoes for family and friends. When she was imprisoned, she was 4 months pregnant, and they put her in solitary confinement. It didn't break her. It made her who she is today, a zealous advocate that helps her clients through their worst nightmare. And she's won a lot of awards. I'll just name a few of them. Top 40 under 40 National Trial Attorneys Association, Top 10 Best Attorneys Award, Most Influential and Prominent Women in Business and Industry Award. She's had several pro bono awards for her volunteer service. I can't wait to unpack all this with Kaysia. But before we do, I want to recognize our show sponsor. Who likes spending a couple of weekends walking car lots, looking for a car? Then you spend 4 or 5 hours in the dealership to buy a car. It's kind of like a root canal appointment. Well, there's a better way to take away all that pain and hassle getting a car. It's called Auto Plaza Direct. They're your personal car concierge. Just tell them the car you want, what you can pay, and they'll go find that car for you. They'll negotiate your best price. They also offer you warranties and financing. It's all full service. Go to autoplazadirect.com to get started with your personal car concierge. The new hassle-free way, the car buying experience you deserve. Auto Plaza Direct. Tell them Brent from Nightmare Success sent you. Welcome in, Kaysia. How are you?
Bless, Brent. Thank you for having me.
Well, I got to tell you, I've really been looking forward to this because we had this phone conversation. We connected. I almost think we connected over. I think we connect over Instagram.
We did.
But anyway,
we did.
Yeah, we did. I started reading your stuff and I thought, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. But here we are. We've made it. We set the time. We're on. Kaysia, you have one of those stories, and I want to take us back to the beginning. Because I think some of the things that happened to you as a little girl kind of set the mark on how you went through what you went through. Can you take us back a little bit into little Kaysia's world and tell us what it was like for you when you were a kid?
Yeah, well, filled with love. My dad is from Jamaica. My mom is from America. And I had the best of both worlds. You have the culture, you have the opportunity to be exposed to two separate worlds. So I had a lot of siblings. I am one of 8 children.
That's a lot.
But It is a lot.
Where do you
It is
fall
a
in?
lot.
Where do you fall into that?
I'm smack dab in the middle. So
Okay.
there was technically like the three older siblings that I have, and then the younger siblings along the way. So I was kind of that middle child, wedged in between, trying to fit in with my older sisters and then playing in the neighborhood clubhouses with my younger siblings. So um, had to kind of maneuver both sides.
Uh-huh.
So my dad,
Which kind of
unfortunately,
is the story of your life.
it is right, both sides. But
That's
bum,
right.
so my dad left the family. I was 8 years old at the time.
Mm.
And so he leaves, and my mom is basically stuck raising all of her children by my father by herself. She never worked because he was always the breadwinner, the provider. So all I could remember was moving from this four-bedroom house in North Miami, beautiful neighborhood, to moving into the inner city. And it was obvious. Just didn't quite understand what was going on, but I
Mhm.
knew that I was in a different environment. But one thing my mother instilled in us was the importance of education. So not only did she instill that in us, I kind of saw it firsthand because my mother nor my father completed their high school education. And I didn't want that for myself. So
Right.
early on, I knew that I wanted a career as a lawyer. And that's kind of how I elevated to where I'm at today.
What was it though? Because you, as a kid going through all that, what was there? Was there somebody you saw out there that was an attorney? Was there somebody in your world that you thought, I want to be that?
Now, I'm going to tell you what happened. I was 10 years old. And on this
I was
particular day
hoping
in
you were going to tell
school,
that story.
yeah, on this particular day in school, I didn't know I told you. Um, so we had a teacher, I believe it was a substitute teacher because it was kind of like the icebreaker. So
Mhm.
she comes in and she told the class, I'm going to go around the room, tell your name and tell me what you want to be when you grow up. And I sat towards the back of the class, and everyone was taking the good answers, the lawyer, the doctor, the fireman, policeman. And I just wanted to be different. So I'm wrecking my brain trying to figure out what do I want to be. Now, at that moment, I didn't know what I wanted to be, right?
Right.
So I started looking up at the border of the classroom, and that's where the presidents were lined, the outside of the classroom. And so when she got to me, I said, I want to be the president. That's it. And she didn't go to the next student. She stayed with me, and I'm like, what did I say wrong? And then she told me, she said, look up there, what do you see? And I said, presidents. And she said, what else do you see? And I said, they're all men. And then she grilled me again. And although I was 10 years old, I really believe that was I knew what I heard about racial disparity. I
Hmm.
heard about racism. I heard about black versus white,
Right.
but I never experienced it. So when she grilled me again and said, what else do you see? I said, they're all white. And then she said, exactly, choose another profession. And to this day, I can't even tell you what I chose. I just know how I felt. And so that day, I go home and I walk home. There's 6 blocks to get home. And I'm holding my tears because I don't want anyone to see me crying. And as soon as I get to my door, I just let it all out. And so my mom's asking me, what's going on? And I couldn't tell her at first, and she's thinking the worst. And
Right.
finally, I told her, my teacher told me I can't be the president. And she's like, oh, I thought it was something else. But then after that, she followed that up with, you can be whatever you want to be. And so I believed her.
And
One,
when you told me that story, we were on the phone, and it sent chills up my spine because first of all, I think what a child is so impressionable at 10 years old, and to have those big ideas, that's exactly what you want a 10-year-old child to shoot for the moon, and to tell a 10-year-old that they can't be that is, wow, it's deep.
yeah, it is deep. And sometimes when I tell that, I could feel the emotion coming back um, because I knew I was hurt. And if you want to dissect it, did I really want to be president or did I want to be different? Didn't matter.
Hmm.
It's the fact that my teacher told me that I couldn't do something. And like you said, teachers are supposed to inspire,
Hmm.
nurture, encourage. And my mom made true on her promise. So what she did was, when I turned 14, because I always, ever since then, she told me I could be president. I kept saying I'm going to be the first female president of the United States, right? And this is 32 years ago, by the way. So when I turned 14, she allowed me to move to DC to live with my aunt. And she said, well, the closer you are to the White House, the closer you'll be to your dreams. So
Yeah.
at that point, I didn't know the qualifications of what it required to be president, but I still wanted to be president. So I started researching the past presidents, and I realized the majority were lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay, I'll work backwards. They were lawyers and they were politicians. So from there on, it was Operation I will become president. I will prove my teacher wrong. And my mom said I can do it. So I decided, okay, I'm going to be a lawyer first, and then I'll run in politics and ultimately reach my destination. And that has been my goal ever since, until I thought that that dream of becoming a lawyer was pretty much diminished.
Okay, so let's get into that because you got out of high school, you went to college. It sounded to me like, Kaysia, that you were having a pretty normal college world existence. You
Yeah.
were doing school, you had a job, kind of like a lot of kids do, working their way through. Can you walk us through what happened?
Yeah, and that's truly what it was. I was working and I didn't just have a job. I had three jobs.
Three
So
jobs.
I did. I worked overnight at a hotel, and then I would, from 11 to 7, I would go straight from work, shower, then go straight to class, get to class by 8 o'clock. I would do my morning classes and go to my second job in between at the school library. It was work study. And then on the weekends, I would work at a shoe store. So I had two part-time jobs, a full-time job, and I went to school full-time.
Wow.
And that's because my mother did not have, obviously, raising 8 children, she didn't have money to pay for my tuition. And although I had a good GPA, it wasn't high enough to pay for my entire tuition. So I
Mhm.
had to pay for school, I had to work. One of my jobs, I was working at a shoe store. And when my friends found out, they would come to my line and I would discount the shoes beyond my employee discount. And I did that several times. And one particular day, I showed up to work as usual and I was told to go into the back room. And from that point, I already knew because I was the top seller, I was the top employee. Everything I did was right. So why am I going to the back room? But before then, I already knew something was. You have that gut
Right. You had a
feeling that
feeling. Yeah.
something's not right. So I go to the back room and I see my supervisor, manager, and they said that, we pulled your register. We see that you're giving away discounts. How many times did you do it? And I just pulled a number out of the air. I said, I don't know, maybe 15 times. And so what they did was they multiplied what they saw by 15, and that amounted to embezzlement. And because I was entrusted with the funds of the employer, and I utilized that against store policy. So she said, okay, well, just sign here and we'll send you home. And I'm like, okay, I just want to go home. We'll fire you, we'll send you home. And so I signed that I did it 15 times, and law enforcement knocked on the door. And I was like, oh, shoot, what just happened? What did I just do? And I don't want to say that, I was tricked into signing the paper. I take full responsibility. But what I want to say is, I wish I would have known, not guess, thinking I can go home after that, because that kind of affected me. So now I'm escorted out in handcuffs, and everything around me was moving in slow motion because I'm like, what just happened? Wait a minute, I'm in college. I have class tomorrow. How do you do this jail thing? I can't go to jail. I'm a college student. And that process from being transported to jail and the booking process, oh my goodness.
Well, I think the crazy thing about this story is that there's so many kids in college, and I think of kids that worked at the bar, our local bar, and they would discount drinks all night long. If you
Yeah.
had one of your fraternity brothers or someone you knew that was working the bar, they'd discount drinks or they give away drinks. And the severity of that is something you would think that somebody say, hey, just don't do that. It's something, that you weren't taking the money, Kaysia, you were discounting, so
Absolutely.
it wasn't like you were getting hundreds of thousands or thousands of dollars into your pocket for discounting shoes. You were just discounting the shoes that were being sold. So I understand that someone can't do that because the business does what the business does and it has expenses and profits and all that. But it seems pretty extreme from the
Yeah.
moment that you were talked to about it to being let out in handcuffs. So anyway, what you go through this, what's going through your mind when you're going through
I
this process?
I thought I was going to get kicked out of college. I thought I was going to get kicked out of my dorm, homeless, every idea you could think of. At the time, I'm thinking, I guess I can't be a lawyer now. I'm about to graduate with a degree in political science. And what also affected me, I remember they put us in a van. There was
Hmm.
other um, arrestees in that van with us, no windows. So we're all just handcuffed to the seat and we're going to the jail. And then I'm thinking, okay, they're going to beat me up. Everything you can think of, because if you've never gone there, all you can think about is what you see on TV.
Right.
But then
Right.
you get there and then they have to strip search you. It's an invasive procedure. Here's a funny thing. I don't think I even told anyone this ring on my hand. I had on since I was 15 years old. And I get to the jail and they try to take it off like about a half hour. And I remember that one of the sergeants said, if you have to take that long to take it off, leave it. And so I still have this ring on, and I told my children, I said, I'm not taking it off until I'm sworn in because it's a reminder that you've been to the bottom. There's nowhere else to go but up.
Mm.
But just being strip searched and feeling violated, it was a humiliating experience, but it also made me better.
So what happened next in this whole process, Kaysia, because I know that there was a situation you had a graduation that
Yeah.
you were going to walk, in ceremony. So how long does this whole process take for you to get before you get to the judge and there's a decision made?
So this is in my senior year. So my arrest occurred October 30th, 2003. I was set to graduate in May 2004. So you go through the whole process. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I have a public defender. I don't check in. If he doesn't ask me any questions, I guess no news is good news. The only thing I remember him telling me is, hey, you have a final court date, and the worst that can happen to you is you'll get probation. Okay, fine. I'll do probation. I did it. I don't want to fight it. So I arrived 2 weeks before my graduation, and we go through the plea, and I accepted full responsibility. And then I hear the judge say, I hereby remand you into custody. And
Mm.
as the bailiff is walking over to me, attempting to put the handcuffs, I'm talking to my lawyer. I said, you're not going to say anything? You're not going to tell him that I'm in college? You're not going to tell him that I'm a first time offender? You told me. I'm having this conversation as I see the bailiff walking over, and he's not saying anything. And at that very moment is when I basically transform into a college student, into my own advocate.
Hmm.
And so, with the handcuffs on me, I say to the judge, Your Honor, I said, I accept full responsibility. However, I'm set to graduate in 2 weeks. I'm a first generation college graduate. My entire family wants to witness me walking across the stage. I promise you, if you allow me to walk across the stage to get my degree in political science, I will turn myself in. And I'm crying. I didn't say it as eloquently, but that's what I said, but I'm crying in the midst of it. And he looks at me and he says, okay, if you do not turn yourself in on this date, I'm sentencing you to 3 years in prison. So they take the handcuffs off. I walk across the stage, and then I literally transform again and traded in my cap and gown into a jailhouse jumpsuit. How humbling is that?
Wow. Well, I want to, the next step of this, I want to get deeper into. Before we do, I'm going to recognize our show sponsor, the White Collar Support Group. And it's the Nightmare Success Podcast is sponsored by the White Collar Support Group, the world's first support group devoted to people navigating the white collar criminal justice journey. I'm a member of the White Collar Support Group, and I can tell you that this is a bunch of people who help each other through the criminal justice journey for free. Whether you're just starting your journey or you've made it through to the other side, this is a great space for you. You can join us on Zoom Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 4 p.m. Pacific. For information, go to prisonist.org. That's prisonist.org. Start here. So you take your cap and gown and you voluntarily turn yourself in. What are the next steps like, Kaysia?
Well, once I turned myself in, they placed me into a cell with two other females. And we get there, and I go on the top bunk because that's like the worst bunk, right? You have a bunk bed and then you have a solo bed. The person with the most longevity gets the solo bed, which is the best spot. And if you're last to come in, you get the bunk bed. Now, I never told anyone I was pregnant. I wasn't really showing it. I didn't think it was anyone's business, quite frankly. I was mad at the world. Although at that point I didn't take full responsibility because I felt like, the punishment didn't fit the crime.
Sure.
I felt that, it was everyone's fault except for mine. So I went through that anger period.
It's like the feather landed on you.
That's right.
Bad luck.
That's right. And that's exactly how I felt. So I came in custody with a chip on my shoulder, and I get on the top bunk. Well, that night, I called my boyfriend at the time, who will be celebrating 20 years of marriage in December, by the way.
Oh, how about that?
And I called him and I said, and I'm complaining about the food. I'm complaining that I have to sleep on the top bunk. Now, I knew that they recorded the calls. I just didn't know people actually listen to the calls and report back. So because I'm complaining that I'm not getting enough food for my baby and that they have me on the top bunk, well, unbeknownst to me, the next day I'm moved into solitary confinement. And it's explained to me that it's for my safety because, general population, females fight, there's a liability. And then we can't have you on the top bunk. You fall, another liability. But I'm like, but I need someone to talk to. I need someone to share my commissary to. People don't realize that we're born to interact. We're humans, right? And solitary confinement is meant for punishment. But for me, it was meant for my safety, but it was also, I felt that it was punishment. It was just unbearable to you and your thoughts for 23 hours out of the day.
I can't imagine.
That was really the time that I spent.
Well, because, solitary confinement, a lot of guys that went to solitary confinement when I was in prison, they came back looking a little bit different just because of what you just explained. And it can break some people. And for some people, it's the time where they get so in touch with the soul of who they are that they come out different in a different way. So how long were you in solitary confinement?
It was a 30-day sentence in solitary confinement.
That's a long time.
Yeah, but you know what? You said something. It's meant to either break you or make you. I have to admit that it did both.
It did both.
It did break me. It broke me initially because I was angry at the world and I started to feel sick. And it wasn't a nauseated feeling. It was, I was making myself sick because of the anger that I had towards the system, towards the judge, towards my attorney. And I'm actually glad that I was pregnant because I stopped thinking about myself and I started thinking about this unborn life inside of me. And I said, well, if I'm sick, I'm going to make my baby sick. And so again, transformation seems to be the theme. I had to transform from this angry person at society, take responsibility. But for me, doing what I did, I probably wouldn't be here. And then the growth afterward. So it was really a mixture of all three, but you have to learn from those experiences so it
It's
won't
really
break you.
interesting. Really interesting because I think that is so true. Because, mistakes everybody makes. Everybody makes mistakes. And, my big thing about that is they don't define you. They can make you better because if you get afraid of making mistakes, then you don't grow also. So, the idea of mistakes defining you, they only define you if you continue to make the same mistake over and over. But you can
Yeah,
grow from mistakes and find yourself and grow from that. And it sounds like that's all happened organically while you were in this solitary confinement.
it did. And I don't like to call what I did a mistake because sometimes a mistake is doing something without prior knowledge.
Yeah.
Those were bad choices that
Yeah.
I made. And
Yeah.
once I took responsibility, I was able to see, you know what? I'm not my bad choice. I'm not my past. So
Yeah.
once I was released, there was a 7-year gap, though, of me debating whether or not I should go back or take the LSAT, go to law school, and try. And I had to kind of wrestle with my faith as well as with fear. Ultimately, my faith superseded my fear, and I applied to go to law
Well,
school.
okay. So let's talk about that a little bit too, though, Kaysia, because I think one of the toughest things is when you experience something like that and you come back out, reentry into the world of, I don't know what it is. It's a vibe of shame, just different things that go on. How am I going to get back in? It's off plan, all these things that happen. How did you step back in and what did you do?
It goes back to how I was raised. So after my dad left my mom, she kept us in church. I think that was her strong foundation. But when I went to college, I was too busy to go to church, to read my Bible, and to have a strong relationship with Christ. So when I was in jail, as clockwork, your breakfast, your door buzzes, and you have about 15 seconds to get to your door to get your food. Well, on this particular morning, as I was getting up out of my bed, I felt like my legs were still sleeping. I felt myself falling over in slow motion. And as I was falling over, I had a split second decision. If I fall on my knees, I'm going to bruise my knees, but I have to protect my unborn child, or I can fall on my belly and to buffer my knees. So obviously, as a mother, I fell on my knees. Now I'm crawling to the door to get my food. And this is the pivotal moment that really changed my life. In the midst of me crawling to the door to get my food, it was like I was in a trance. And I saw a crossroads because my plan was, Brent, I had already given up on being a lawyer.
Mhm.
Once I got out of jail, I was going to move to New York because my minor was in fashion merchandising and, go into fashion. Well,
That doesn't surprise that you were into fashion.
I love it, right? So the Spirit of the Lord literally met me in my jail cell and he showed me a vision that if I go to New York, it's not going to work. And the other crossroads was, but if you rededicate your life back to me, you'll be a lawyer. And then
Mm.
after that vision went away, I'm like, am I hallucinating in here? I didn't quite believe what I saw, but I did. I followed Christ. So I get out of jail. My boyfriend at the time, we both get baptized. We got married, and year 2 goes by, 4 goes by, 5, 7 years go by, and I'm like, God, was that really your voice? Because you told me if I rededicate my life back to you, I'll be a lawyer. Here it is, year 7.
Mhm.
But 7 is the number of completion. So I apply to go to law school. I get accepted because of my LSAT score. I get a scholarship. I'm still in DC now, but the school is in Florida. That's how I ended up here.
Okay.
So now I have to uproot my entire family. At the time, I had 3 children, married. My husband had his entire career. He
Hmm.
gave up his career
To come with you down there.
to come down here.
Wow.
So I get to law school. The dean of admissions meets me and says, we'll accept you. In fact, here's a scholarship. However, we want to warn you that you can graduate from law school, you can pass the bar, but we cannot guarantee you that the Florida bar will accept you due to your crime of dishonesty. So this is your one last whether or not you want to register. And you know what I did, Brent? I remembered the promise of God. And I said, I'm going to go forward because this is my opportunity to see if that was really a vision from the Lord.
Yeah.
And so, again, my faith superseded my fear. So I graduate, I pass the bar, and I get to Tallahassee and I sit before a board of 5 people. And for 3 hours, they grilled me about every aspect of my life. At times, it was super emotional because I felt like the scum of the earth. And at times, I answered those questions with my head held high. And 2 weeks later, on September 30th, I believe, in 2014, I was sworn into the bar. They accepted me. And so basically, that's a full transformation of the testimony and validation of I didn't go crazy in my jail cell. The
No.
Lord met me, and his promises are yea and amen.
I got to say, there's something you and I talked about before we got on that is such a perfect point to what you just said, is that our record never goes away. Being a felon, ex-felon, we live with it all the way through our lives. It's how we handle it. And I think what you just said, Kaysia, you made a point to decide, I'm going to fight. I'm going to battle through this because I can tell my story. I know who I am. And they grilled you. They tried to come at you from all angles, but you were who you were because of what you went through. And I'm sure that board went back and talked and said, this is the type of person we need. These are the type of people we need. But there's so many people, because of the fear of being rejected, because of the fear of the unknown, of what would happen, what will they think, what will people think of me, stops people in their tracks. And
Yeah.
what you did it for a lot of people, because you're a trailblazer in the sense that there are people who need to be attorneys that have gone through an event that has made a record for them, and it shouldn't be the end, but they think it should be. And what you did is you're proving that if you have belief in yourself, step into the unknown and see what happens. And look what happened. You became an incredible attorney that
Yeah.
helps
I
so many
always say,
people.
yeah. And listen, I always tell people fear will paralyze your success. And when I
Yeah.
look back over my life, some of the things that I did, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. What do I have to lose? And I'm talking about going to law school, applying to law school, sitting for the bar, just all of the things. Your past indiscretions should not be a life sentence. It should be a lesson learned. You move forward, but you're absolutely right. To this day, I have so many awards, I can't even count. Top 10, top 40, top 100.
It's impressive.
But there's times where I'll meet someone for the first time, and whether they knew my story before or they find out after, they always inquire because, a crime of dishonesty, a crime of money is frowned upon,
Right.
and you want to say, no, 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 I'm not a thief. That was when I was 20 years old. That's not who I am. And by the way, I didn't steal out a register. It's like you want to explain yourself.
Right.
Not anymore. Not
Yeah.
any. I am so beyond that, and I'm glad that occurred. And here's why. Because it taught me the value of integrity. It taught me the value of honesty. And even running my own law practice, I handle hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting in my trust account.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not tempted whatsoever because, first and foremost, I have the Spirit of the Lord living inside of me and I'm guided by that principle. So I can't be tempted by that. I'm an overcomer. So, what you think of me, whether it's my past or if you're trying to hold that over my head, that has no bearing because ultimately we all sin and fall short of God's glory. There's no one that's righteous and holy and pure. So, I'm reminded that I can't feel bad about the past because there's nothing you can do to change it, but you can project and have a better future. And I think this is what we're trying to relay to your
Absolutely.
audience.
And it's such a big deal. And the other thing that I think that we've kind of skirted over, but I think it's a big thing, is that you and your husband have also walked through this journey together, and
Yeah.
that whatever that is, that means something that you have this balance to have somebody that supports you, believes in you. And, I think I want to talk about too, like when you first get, Kaysia, that opportunity to represent somebody and walk into that, probably a jail. What was that like for you? That first client of being on the other side of the world, the complete other side of the world.
To this day, most of my clients, I represent some serious cases, murder cases, sexual battery. They don't get a bond, right? So I usually see them once a week. That feeling never goes away. When I walk up those stairs to go freely without being escorted, and when I leave, it's like I'm always thanking God that I'm leaving on my own free will. I'm entering it on my own free will. It gave me more empathy and compassion for my clients. I never forget, I started off as a public defender. And when I first saw my clients, they usually come into court and they sit where the jury sit.
Mhm.
And they have all the inmates over there. And naturally, I just went close to my client and I'm touching him on the shoulder. I was very personal. And I never forget, this attorney said, "You don't know what they have. You don't get too close to them." And by the way, my colleague didn't know that I was previously incarcerated. And that was a teachable moment for her.
Yeah.
I said, "They have just as many germs on them as we have." I said, "It doesn't make me better than them." And I said, "Besides," and I threw the Constitution back at her. I said, "They're innocent until proven guilty. This is just formality." And every client, I treat them with the utmost respect. From the time that I was a public defender, it didn't change my representation. It didn't change from now when I'm a private attorney.
Hmm.
But that empathy and compassion, and I think that's why I was able to get so many acquittals, is because I lawyered from the heart.
Yep.
And I always say no. In my head, I'm like, no, 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 I don't want my client to be found guilty because I don't want them to experience what I experienced. And I just give it my all. So I feel like that jail experience, it it propelled me and made me into the person I am today, and it made me stronger.
Kaysia, you'd be so good in front of a jury. I mean, I can't
I'm telling you,
imagine.
I love it. I love it.
But seriously though, that passion does come through. I mean, it's something that people, you're vulnerable, authentic, and whatever that intangible thing is, people feel that. And I think, and you want that from your attorney, obviously, but you want it from everybody. But particularly when your freedom is on the line, you want someone passionate. You want someone that believes and uh, who has a vulnerability, that knows what you're going through.
Yeah.
Those are all such big things that I hope, that people listening to this who are stuck and they might have, a great, brilliant brain, and they've been afraid, either they lost their license or they think they should get their law license. Because if we have more people like that in the justice system, it helps balance it. It's those scales. It helps balance because these people they know what it's like. They feel it. They know it. And I think it means that much more when somebody's looking for that desperation of, please help me. And that person who knows it and has walked it is the one that's leading them through it is a big deal.
Yeah, it is. And Brett, I want to just tell you this quick
Mhm.
story because typically I don't go around in court telling the judge, unless they Google my name, I don't say, "Hey, by the way, I was arrested." So, in my entire 10 years of practice, I only utilized myself as an example twice. And I remember my client was set to go to jail for 15 years. He was just caught red-handed, and it was up to the judge to issue the sentencing. And I remember I just started speaking to the judge. I said, "Your Honor, you know, X amount of years ago, I was incarcerated." And I said, "Yeah, jail is good for some reasons." I said, "But jail can be detrimental for others." I said, "In this particular instance, I'm asking you to give him this sentence instead." And I never forget, I don't know if he looked at me like, "Oh, I never knew you went to jail," or, "Wow, you just made yourself, you know, you just opened up yourself to the court on behalf of
Yes.
your client."
That's
But
the
instead of
vulnerability
him
I'm talking
serving
about.
15 years, the judge gave him 15 weekend sentences. So he had
Wow.
to check himself in and check himself out. And I was like, wow. And then he told him on top of that, I'm only doing this because of your lawyer. So talk about fighting for your clients.
Yeah.
You have to have a passion for it.
Gotta have a passion. Well, you have been all over the news. And one of the things that I think is so impressive about you, you went into running because, you know, in this world, state, the judges run for election. And I forget, was there, gosh, how many hundreds of thousands of votes were there?
115,000 for me
115,000.
and 115,000 for my opponent. And it was a difference of 317 votes.
317 votes.
Yes.
And this was a sitting judge who'd been on the bench for a while.
Yes.
And you were 317 votes away from that, which is amazing. You went through a really, really tough election. And, you know, it's possible that you could be in a position to be a judge. And what an incredible thing that would be, Kaysia.
Oh, yes. And I don't dismiss that. So with that, and again, that goes to not letting fear paralyze your success. I just saw a problem and I believed that I was a solution to that problem, which is why I ran. I mean, I at the time that I ran, I had a very lucrative law firm.
Yeah.
And I would have been taking a cut. But I thought that I could, sometimes you have to lead with your heart and in your heart's desire, and then the money will follow you later on. So yes, I did run for judge. And I don't even see it as a failure because one thing running for judge was it taught me politics, right?
Yeah,
so on this
that's
road,
what you've always talked about is politics.
Exactly, that road to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Right.
You know, and I always say, you know, that was a dry run because I didn't know how to be a politician, but I knew how to be myself. And there were times I was on the campaign trail and people would say, you don't look like a lawyer. You're going to be a judge. You're too happy or you're too this. But that's what connected to the people. But you know what else connected to the people? That I was open and honest about my past.
Yes.
And I used that. And I said, listen, 20 years ago, 18 years ago, I was incarcerated. But don't judge me for what I did 18 years ago. Judge me for what I've been doing for the past 18 years for my community, for the legal system, for the justice system. And when I tell you, people would come up to me after I gave my presentation with tears. And sometimes we fight so hard to be successful that we don't even recognize how successful we are. Like there was a time that I was like, wow, I really did that. Or I really convinced the jury that my client was not guilty for first-degree murder. I did that because we're in the moment. But when I saw so many people inspired and they actually voted for me knowing that I went to jail.
Knowing the reason for probably.
Because they knew everything.
It created the whole you.
They knew it all and they still thought and saw fit for me to be on the bench. So for that, I say to be continued. I'm not I'm not running now, but in the future, you'll see my name again.
And your kids have done well. I was reading that your was the oldest son who's on scholarship in college. The whole thing, you've done well, Kaysia. You've done well.
And to answer your question for your listeners, yes, when I was pregnant with my son, that same son that I was pregnant with while I was in jail is on a full scholarship. He's in his second year of college for academic and football. And even this morning, he'll call me every morning, Mom, you're reading your Bible. So you have to instill integrity and love in your children. You train up a child. So
what does he play in football, by the way? Because football season's right on. Running back. Oh my gosh.
North Carolina.
Wow. North Carolina running. I love it. I love it. And the season's starting this week, so it's all good. It's all big.
Oh yeah. This is a football house.
I bet it is. Well, Kaysia, I think what you have done, how you have lived your life, how you've gotten through it, it's a true inspiration. I think it, you know, if anybody's looking for a Netflix series out there to produce, this is the one. This is the Kaysia story. Kaysia, I always ask people, you know, this question, after all of this you've been through, your whole journey of where you're at now, what do you think's your biggest takeaway?
My biggest takeaway is the fact that fear did not paralyze me,
Mm.
and faith over fear, as we explained. And one of my favorite scriptures, I'll leave you with this because this is who I am. This is ingrained in me. Psalm 121, verses 1 and 2. I look to the hills for whence cometh my help. My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. And when you think about the vastness of the clouds itself, it minimizes the problem or the problems that you have. And there's times in my stressful career that I'm dealing with the burdens of 15 people at one time, and I'll just feel weighed down. It's okay to take a step away
Mm.
and just look up. Just look up. Because the same God that took me from the jailhouse to God's house to the courthouse is the same God that can take me to the White House.
And
So
that's what
don't give up.
I'm waiting. I can't wait for you to be in the White House. We need Kaysia Earley in the White House. That
And my
10-year-old
name's
girl needs
Kaysia
to be in the
Earley,
White
and I
House.
approve that message.
And for those who want to get a hold of Kaysia, I guess the easiest way is through the earlylawfirm.com. Is that the best way to get a hold of you? And then
My first,
you're
yeah,
on
my first and last
Instagram.
name.com. Yeah, my first and last name.com is my website, kaysiaearley.com. That's the main site. And of course, I'm on social media. And if you want to know more about my jail experience, you can just always Google my first and last name and it'll pop up in detail.
That is awesome. I love it. Love all of everything that you've gone through and how you've done it. And the biggest takeaway is that fear didn't paralyze you.
That's
And
right.
that's such a great, solid, strong message. And it's a great message to end on because that is your story, but it should be everybody's story because we've all got prisons we've built up in our own mind. We've got to knock them down, but the way to knock them down is not to be paralyzed by fear. And the only way to do that is to step forward.
One step at a time. That
One
is a great
step.
message. And I thank you, Brent, for utilizing your platform to encourage those because oftentimes people that's incarcerated are looked upon as the least of those, but they are the greatest of society once they turn it around.
I love it. Well, and for those out there for talking about gratitude, I want to thank Homestead Financial for letting me use this podcast room. For anybody who's looking for a book out there, I've got one, Nightmare Success. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. And I just got a new website. Speaking of websites, it just went live 2 weeks ago, brentcassidy.com. I spell it wrong. I spell it with a TY, not a DY. As I used to say to my people when I was writing my emails back and forth from Leavenworth, stay strong. I'll do the same. Kaysia Earley, keep doing everything you're doing. I'd love to just clone you and take you all across the country. You are awesome.
Thank you so much. Likewise. Bye.
Nightmare Success, in and out.